Well, here's the thing. I can easily see episode 2 of The Strain kind of dividing people because, on one hand, it is continuing the trend, or at least the style of episode 1, which is kind of giving you a little bit of story, kind of a little bit more build up into the eventual vampire plague that will supposedly befall the city of New York. However, at the same time, the pace is kind of slow, kind of methodical. It's not quite as sluggish as something like The Bridge, but at the same time, it may be a little too slow for some people. I didn't say I was bored. I mean, this the fact that this episode was shorter than the previous one. Geez, that was like an hour long pilot, or an hour and 15 minutes. It seemed like for the pilot episode for this, and this was at your kind of standard 40 minutes. So the pacing, I think was better. I wasn't The episode did not drag as much, and the character development that we got, while some of it may seem a little superfluous in the grand scheme of things, some of it may seem a little redundant. Some, I think, gave a little bit more depth to characters that we were previously introduced to in the first episode. But let's start with the good. Well, the acting is still fairly solid. I mean, that's to be expected when you have a cast like this, because you have Corey Stoll, who's still really good as the lead. He has the presence. He's likable enough. He handles the professionalism of this character very well. Mia Maestro is still very good as his coworker slash woman he had an affair with years ago. I don't really know if that will come into play, but she's still a pretty likable support, and it's nice that she's not at all spiteful toward him as a husband. Not that they're married, but she's trying to be supportive of his quest to maintain joint custody over his son. Blah blah blah. So they still have decent chemistry, and even the minor players like Sean Astin and Regina King, they still make the most of their roles. I wish their roles had been expanded because, like I said, these are really good actors. But I assume that they're going to get more to do as the episode rolls along. But what I was talking about in terms of giving certain characters more to work with this time around is the Mexican delivery guy, the Mexican street guy who delivered the coffin. He's actually given a little bit more depth this time around because we actually see his home life. We actually see him trying to make a relatively straight income for the sake of his mother, whereas his little brother kind of stole something and gave it to his mother as a gift, and he was pretty pissed about that. So this character, when I saw this scene, I said, okay, I'm more into this character than I was in the first episode when they just portray him as this stereotypical street punk guy. However, some of the characterization with Dr. Ephraim Goodweather, again, did seem kind of redundant this time around, because we already know that he has a strained relationship with his family. We already know that he's consumed by his work. Really, this episode tread over some ground that has already been tread well in the first episode. Really, the only significant new material that Corey Stoll got this time around was the scene where he was at the alcoholic meeting, which that was a very good scene. Again, he plays this well, but I just wish they had given him a little bit more to work with. However, the most interesting character still remains David Bradley, because I'm really interested as to well, obviously I'm interested because he's the most interesting character, but he's probably one character that they've shrouded in mystery that I'm actively saying, what's this guy's deal? I mean, where does this guy come from? What's with the number? I mean, was he a vampire? Was he previously infected by this? That would explain a lot. That would explain how he knows how to combat these things. I mean, give me some answers. And they're revealing just enough. I mean, his character and what they're revealing about him and the way that he's kind of playing it, they're revealing just enough to keep you interested, but without giving away too much to the point where you will stop caring because the mystery is over. So, and David Bradley, the way he plays it, good God, he's pretty intense for as old as he is. I mean, isn't he in his 70s? I think he caught a little bit unfair flack for his portrayal of Robb Stark's murderer in Game of Thrones, or one of Robb Stark's murderers. But that doesn't change the fact that does not change the fact that David Bradley is a great actor, and he is making the most of this character. However, a new character that we got this time around was Kevin Durand as this exterminator / health inspector guy. We don't really know how he's going to factor in. I mean, he's entertaining enough to watch. I mean, he really seems like one of Guillermo del Toro's characters that he normally writes for Ron Perlman. In fact, as I understand it, he wrote this part with Ron Perlman in mind. I don't know if a deal fell through or if Perlman's schedule was just too hectic or whatever. But Kevin Durand, he plays it goofy, but not goofy enough to where, okay, this guy is really annoying. He plays it just enough to where okay, I can still be entertained by this character without necessarily venturing into the realm of spoof or parody or ridiculousness. But speaking of roles that may have been carved out for other people, the evil businessman guy who visited David Bradley in prison, I swear to God, this guy took lessons from Christoph Waltz. His name is Richard Samel. He's this German actor. He looks like Christoph Waltz a little bit. He sounds like Christoph Waltz. He delivers his lines like Christoph Waltz did in Inglourious Basterds, when Waltz played Hans Landa. which this guy was also in Inglourious Basterds. So I have to wonder, did he follow Christoph Waltz around and study him for this role? I don't know, but he's pretty entertaining. You could argue, well, is he going to become too hammy? But at the same time, this is Guillermo del Toro we're talking about. I mean, Guillermo del Toro really seems to know how to balance these really dramatic and intense scenes with his own unique brand of sort of quirky comedy. I mean, I remember he did that a lot in Hellboy and Pacific Rim. So I'm still giving this series the benefit of the doubt. This episode didn't really offer much in the way of new stuff, or at least new stuff narratively, but it did advance the plot a little bit. It upped the suspense a little bit. I just think some audience members would have liked to have seen a bit more. I think they would have liked to have had the second episode really hit the ground running, rather than just more build up to the eventual vampire plague. They keep promising like, oh, in a few days, none of it is going to matter. In a few days, I'm going to feel happier than I've ever been, says the bad guy, or one of the bad guys. But you know, talking about it can only get you so far. The build-up can only get you so far. There is such a thing as having too much build-up. I don't think this show has quite reached that point yet. But But I have to give them credit. They did find a fresh new way to portray vampires that does not feel that actually feels kind of credible. It does not feel totally silly. I mean, obviously you look at how the character, Robert Atkin Downs' character, which, by the way, kudos to the guys in charge for actually crediting a voice actor, Robert Atkin Downs, in the main credits. I mean, normally when you have these big AAA, or not really AAA, but high profile shows like this, especially weekly shows, and you're going through the opening credits, like Corey Stoll, Mia Maestro, and then toward the end they said voice of Robert Atkin Downs. Voice acting does not really get enough respect in the mainstream, if you ask me. So seeing Robert Atkin Downs credited for his role as the main vampire, personally, I got some enjoyment out of. I got some. I think that was particularly rewarding to the voice acting industry as a whole. But design standpoint, we only saw the back of this vampire guy. He looks kind of like he's dressed kind of like one of the Nazgul, the Ringwraiths from Lord of the Rings. But when he takes his hood off, he kind of sort of looks like Nosferatu. Or Count Orlok from Nosferatu. So, like I said, they're giving you just enough to keep you interested without necessarily giving away their whole hand. Really, the only problem with this episode is I think, largely due to personal preference. I think a lot of people, especially given how crazy and zany Guillermo del Toro can be at times, and how dark and somewhat demented that his movies can be, I think people maybe expected a little bit more the second time around. But overall, I enjoyed it. I'm still interested to see what's going to happen. And yeah, The Strain, it's surprisingly gripping. It's not quite up there with the likes of Hannibal, Vikings, Game of Thrones. But for what it is and what it's setting up, I'm bearing with it. And yeah, that's about all I got.